Watch some of his matches on the Open Series. You know that Steve is very sharp.
It's no surprise to see him playing Obzon mid-range. He'll start things off with the Sansep Citadel. The boss, Tom Ross, playing Jeskai Token Jesse. A different take here for Tom. Typically, we see him playing some sort of low-to-the-ground red strategy. He is one of the people who put White-Blue Heroic on the map, but you can see here he is doing something completely different. His hand, 2 copies of Wild Slash, a Sarkin, a Dig Through Time, and a Lightning Strike.
And this matchup, at least game 1, looks like it's pretty bad news for Tom. He's kept a hand that's very polarized, very good against little creature decks, pretty bad against control decks. And Steve's build of Obzon midrange definitely tilted towards the control end. Only Corsair, Crewfix, Siege, Rhino, and 1 copy of Tassiger as the creatures. A lot of Planeswalkers, 2 main deck Read the Bones. These Wild Slashes are going to be hard-pressed to really matter.
A forest after the Thoughtseize, as Thoughtseize did take Dig Through Time. Tom picks up a copy of Raise the Alarm, and all he can do is pass the turn back. So Rubin will draw. He will deploy a Plains, and this is a Corsair of Crewfix. Let's take a look at the top card. It is a Ugin the Spirit Dragon, a reveal.
Okay. Well, now the terms of engagement have been established. I'm Wild Slash guy, and you're Ugin guy. See how it shakes out.
Tom going to search up an island here with his Flooded Strand. We'll have a Raise the Alarm here in just a moment, I imagine. And there are the soldier tokens. I have to imagine that Ugin's just a one-of in his take on Obzon midrange.
Yep, it's a fun of.
Yep. So soldier tokens incoming. Ross will draw a card here. A Temple of Triumph is timely. Here's the attack. Rubin has no interest in blocking, as he knows that the boss does have a Lightning Strike. Temple of Triumph will allow Tom to scry. Looks like he's going to keep it on top and just pass the turn back. Ugin's the draw, Sorin's on top. Land will come into play, trigger the Corsair. In comes the Corsair. And now it's time for a Siege Rhino. That'll resolve. Rubin will gain some life up to 20. Ross will go a little bit lower. And we'll head back the boss's way.
And Siege Rhino is one of the most problematic cards for Jeskai tokens. It sounds silly to say because Siege Rhino is just powerful across the board. But unless the token deck has a pretty big advantage, you can't really attack through it. You can't chump block it, which is his general way of racing big creatures.
DC Tom's going to have to use 2 cards to get that Siege Rhino off the table, and Lightning Strike and a Wild Slash, so he can keep forcing through some damage here. His draw step for the turn was a Stoke the Flames. Wild Slash, well, it's just a shock, but probably a little bit more than that, actually.
I think this card's very good. I mean, Shock has periodically showed up in standard formats, and this is Shock with some upside.
Elspeth, the top card here of Rubin's deck. His draw was a copy of Sorin, Solemn Visitor. We'll see if he has any interest in deploying that this turn. Yeah, tap some mana. You see there's a copy of Obzon Charm in his hand. Looks like he might be going Sorin territory. He's going to go Read the Bones instead. Feeling this is a fine turn to take a turn off to get a little bit deeper into his deck. Elspeth and Plains the card he's looking at.
And I think he's, I mean, the big thing right now is just he's just looking for mana.
Yep. And there's a Temple.
And getting a fresh spin with the Corsair Crewfix is worth a lot here.
Top card's Elspeth here. Of course, she's gaining some life along the way here thanks to the Corsair. Elspeth's going to go to the bottom. Take a look at the top card now. It is a copy of Thoughtseize. And of course, we'll come into the red zone, bringing Ross down to 10. We'll head back the boss's way, and he will draw a card. It's a copy of Battlefield Forge, so that's land number 4. He's trying to figure out, is there a way for me to work myself out of this situation? Because it's a pretty bad one here for Tom right now.
Rough start here.
He's going to go with Stoke the Flames. Going to have to take 1 to cast it, but Corsair's now off the table. But Corsair, well, it's done its damage.
Exactly. Found some lands, gained some life. And now Steve can start moving over to the real power here. Elspeth, a lot of removal. Maybe Ugin.
Yeah. Thoughtseize was the draw. Of course, don't need to see the top card as Corsair is no longer in play. Elspeth will come in. 3 soldier tokens will be joining the party here in just a moment. We'll head back the boss's way. But Elspeth on a relatively stable board is, of course, always a scary threat. And that's exactly where Rubin is at right now. There's a Plains. This is a Sarkin. You want to talk about powerful cards that I haven't seen a ton of play. This is certainly one of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of it is just competition with Stormbreath Dragon, and there's been times where Stormbreath has been the preferred threat, but Sarkin is very good, only one color, and has not shown up that much.
It'll knock Elspeth down to 1. As Ross's life total is an 8 right now. (2014), of course, the year of Tom Ross. You think about it. 2 invitational wins. Flexing his muscles as far as deck building is concerned.
A Grand Prix finals finish, a near second top 8 in Orlando.
It was a heck of a year. There's a Thoughtseize to take care of the Wild Slash. Attack time. Looks like these soldiers might be going towards the boss here. No interest in taking care of Sarkin at all.
No reason to do it halfway.
Yeah. Sarkin's elevator is going to go up. Looks like he might be going after Elspeth, but an Abzan Charm is going to take care of that, as that, of course, is an exiling effect. A Mystic Monastery is Tom's play. And I think in just a short moment here, as there is a Sorin, that elevator will tick up. This game will be over. So Steve Rubin's going to win game number 1 here over Tom Ross. Abzan mid-range up a game over Jeskai Tokens. And it's not new and it's not flashy, but it's still pretty good.
And Steve made a subtle play there, but a significant one. There he played the Sorin to plus to kill Tom instead of using Bile-Blight to kill Tom's tokens, because Tom saw the Sorin but not the Bile-Blight. So that seems like a small thing, maybe a choice made at random, but Steve's definitely aware of the cards that Tom saw through Corsair reveals and wants to conceal as much information as he possibly can.
We'll take a look at the sideboards here, and we will start with Tom Ross, and he's got quite a few one-ofs here, actually, in Citadel Siege. A Mastery of the Unseen, a Dig Through Time, a Disdainful Stroke, an Elspeth Sun's Champion, a Burn Away, a Scouring Sands, a Glare of Heresy, an Anger of the Gods, and an Erase to go along with 3 negates and 2 copies of End Hostilities.
Well, I definitely like the Disdainful Stroke and the 3 copies of Negate quite a bit. Once you get past that, I mean, Glare of Heresy is okay against the style of deck. You do need to answer Siege Rhino. It's good against the Planeswalkers, though Tom only wants to get so reactive.
On the other side of things here, I imagine we'll see some normalized stuff here from Rubin, but what does he have in the sideboard for his Abzan mid-range deck?
1 Erase, 1 Utter End, 3 copies of Drown in Sorrow, an Ajani Mentor of Heroes, 2 copies of Read the Bones, 1 Tassiger, the Golden Fang, 1 in the main deck, 1 in the sideboard, 3 copies of Glare of Heresy, a Murderous Cut, a Bile-Blight, a Liliana Vest. The removal spells, especially the Drown in Sorrows, very good here, and probably some Glare of Heresies as well. Answer Ascendancy or any Monastery Mentor type threats that sneak through.
Does make you wonder if Steve knows exactly what Tom's on. Tom didn't do very much that game. It looked like more of a Jeskai control deck than anything, honestly. You know, we didn't see Jeskai Ascendancy. We saw quite a few burn spells and Dig Through Time. So, and he only has 1 Dig Through Time in his deck. So it makes you wonder how Rubin's going to sideboard in this matchup.
I think that when you see Raise the Alarm, you can assume maybe it's not a full-blown token strategy, but probably is using Ascendancy, and you can sideboard appropriately.
On both these players, we'll get ready for game number 2. We will quickly talk about Next Level Magic, the 2015 edition available by the Innovator.
Yes, this is exciting stuff here. A 2015 update with new examples and new cards. The book has also been out of print in paperback for close to a year now, so this is an opportunity to purchase a paperback copy. Also available on ebook. So StarCityGames.com/NLM to order your copy today.
Chapin apparently working on another album now, among other endeavors.
A man with a full plate.
Yes, to say the least. With his remastering of Next Level Magic, very, very well done. Definitely take the opportunity, if you've never had that, to check out that book. Tell you how to build all sorts of decks, including these two here in Jeskai Tokens and Abzan Midrange. Abzan Midrange, such a straightforward, kind of honest deck in what it does, but it's just good at what it does.
It is, and there's a lot of wiggle room, you know? There's so many good cards to choose from that you have a lot of room to customize depending on where you think the metagame's at.
Like this deck a lot, and you know, if there's one person to build it, one person to customize it, it is certainly the player on the right there in Steve Rubin. Not the biggest name in the Open Series, not someone that we see week in and week out, but when we do see him, he seems to win.
Seems to win a lot, and as you mentioned, high praise from Pro Tour champion Ari Lex, really giving Steve the lion's share of the credit for what that mid-range deck ultimately looked like.
Yeah, member of Team TCG player, and you have to imagine in Pro Tour Fate Reforged in a couple of weeks, he'll be working with Ari Lax and the rest of those guys to get ready yet again for what should be a spectacular event, the Modern Tournament after the Treasure Cruise, Birthing Pod, and Dig Through Time bannings. No idea what to expect there, though. The Modern Premier IQ that will take place this weekend perhaps will give us a better idea.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole new world, even though Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time are a relatively new addition to the format, and so losing them doesn't maybe influence that much. Birthing Pod has been over the format for years now.
Yeah.
And a format without Birthing Pod really, really changes.
Those are results I'm definitely going to be interested to see at the conclusion of all of our tournaments tomorrow. Our Legacy Premier IQ, of course, that one's without Treasure Cruise, and then the Modern one without Treasure Cruise, Dig, and Birthing Pod. What the heck's going to win that tournament? Who knows? Scape Shift and Twin sound like good options. You know, Wild Nakado's been unbanned for a while, but we haven't really talked about Zoo at all. Perhaps it's time for that to come back.
And remember, Golgari Grave Troll also unbanned.
Yeah.
And at the Grand Prix in San Diego a few years back, I saw someone doing well with a Dredge-style deck. I'm sure he would have been thrilled to play with Golgari Grave Troll.
These players are starting for Tri-Lands. For the boss, it's a Mystic Monastery. For Mr. Rubin, it is, of course, your Sandsep Citadel. A Temple of Triumph. Tom will leave the top card on top and pass the turn back. Steve will draw. We'll play Caves and now Thoughtseize, get a better idea of what Tom's working with here. And you can see his hand, Monastery Mentor, among the cards. Looks like a couple copies of Treasure Cruise. Disdainful Stroke as well. For a minute there, I was like, is that 4 Treasure Cruises? But looks like actually 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke along with a cruise. A smattering of blue cards, we'll say.
I think it's actually a 2-2 split.
Fair enough.
I'm sympathetic because, you know, the art's pretty similar.
They are actually just strikingly similar now that I'm looking at them in that context. As Tom will play a Battlefield Fortune, pass the turn back. If Steve has something like a Courser or Read the Bones, it's a great turn to play it, and he will play a Courser. Top card there is Tassiger. Tom will play a Flooded Strand and pass that turn back over to Rubin. Tassiger's the draw. Temple of Plenty's on top. There is an easy attack for 2. Ross will go down to 18. Here's another copy of the Courser. See the land on top of the deck. We'll see if this does resolve, and it looks like it will. Oh, Ross will give it some thought here. Temple's going to come in, trigger. A little scry action, of course. Temple of Malleus is the top card. Can't forget about those Courser triggers as well as Rubin moves up to 18. And the Temple will go to the bottom. Top card here will be Ugin yet again.
Going big.
Oh, it's just too good to sideboard out. Such a powerful card.
Once it's in play, yeah. Small detail.
Well, that's what Courser's for. I'll find those lands.
Helps.
Yeah, it certainly does help.
Not doing it by itself.
I saw Ross sacrifice a Flooded Strand to dig an island out of his deck, another card in the graveyard. There's a Flooded Strand. He'll get himself another island. Patrick, how do you feel about the mismatching islands here?
Far be it from me to critique the stylings of Tom Ross, but that is really rough.
You'd think with how much winning he's done over the past year, he could probably sure that up.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough to see. Tough to see.
Treasure Cruise done resolving. We'll head back Rubin's way. Ugin the draw, Abzan Charm on top. The Coursers will come in, bring Ross down to 12. Now there's a siege router, bring him down to 9. Rubin will gain a little bit of life here. But he is under the gun, and now he needs some sort of master move as well, probably something like an End Hostilities to get this stuff off the table.
And I would be surprised if that card got brought in. I guess it's not impossible, but Steve definitely looked like the control deck game 1, and I'm sure Tom sideboarded accordingly.
You don't expect to get run down like this, but that's definitely what's happening. Now, if you're Ross, you got to do something. You can see. He knows it. He spent a lot of time drawing cards and getting thought seized, but it's like all you have to do is just play a land, which is pretty boring.
I've seen the raised eyebrows, jutting of the lower lip look from Tom in a few times where he's just getting his head kicked in.
Yeah.
It's a Tom Ross look.
Here's a copy of Raise the Alarm. So we'll get 2 soldiers and a monk. Going to fill up that graveyard a little bit more, but he's not been able to get anything started either game so far. I'm not sure if Tom has some sort of Convoke card to cast here or not, but a little pause in the action. Maybe players getting their life total situated here before moving forward. Yep, that's exactly what they're doing, making sure life totals are good before moving forward here. But Tom is in a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, Siege Rhino, facing down Siege Rhino behind on the board is a very common losing position for Jeskai tokens.
A force will come in. Both coursers will trigger. Hero's Downfall is on top of the deck now here for Steve Rubin. You see his hand. There's Nutteren hanging out there. We know about the Ugin Abzan Charm as well. Another courser too. And Tasigur. But the easy thing to do here is just get on the attack. Tom gonna make a quick jump block.
And Tom needs to jump block at least one thing because he knows about the Abzan Charm.
Yep. The question is, he's supposed to jump block two things. But he won't. He'll just go down to 3. And there is the Golden Fang. And it's a passing of the turn. Ross will draw a copy of Jeskai Ascendancy. And does that let him maybe go wild here?
Well, I don't know if he has much of in the way of proactive spells in his hand as part of the problem. You know, he has counter spells, he has a Treasure Cruise he can't cast, you know, assuming that he casts the Ascendancy.
Yeah, he does have a Jeskai Charm in hand. That's a little bit of proactivity.
I mean, you get the feeling he's actually not real, he's like not that far off.
Yeah. Let's get another Monk token here from casting the Ascendancy too. Can't forget about that.
And if Tom just says go and lets, you know, Steve go into combat, facing down all those potential prowess triggers and who knows what can happen to you, I don't know. Tom may not be out of this just yet.
And the Jeskai Charm is the important card here. The Hero's Downfall might make things a little bit difficult, but Rubin will start by playing a land off the top of his deck. Siege Rhino's on top of the deck now. So it's going to touch interesting. I'll definitely give Steve Rubin some things to think about.
Well, what's interesting here also is Steve kind of doesn't want to just run something into a Disdainful Stroke before combat, because then there's an Ascendancy trigger and another Monk token gets made and all the prowess triggers occur. So Steve is kind of incentivized to say just move into combat first or only cast 3 mana spells, and we'll see if that allows him to get into lethal.
Here's a Hero's Downfall. You have to imagine that's going after the Monastery Mentor.
Yeah, I think that Steve needs to start the turn by saying, do whatever you're going to do up front.
Tom's going to take 2 points of damage here to cast Jeskai Charm. I think the mode here is going to be put Siege Rhino back on top of the deck. But he's going to get a Jeskai Ascendancy trigger. He's going to get a Monk token. He's going to get a bunch of prowess triggers. So he'll get the draw and discard. Elspeth among the cards now that he's looking at. He has to figure out what he wants to discard. He's going to go with a Disdainful Stroke. So now those monks are going to be pretty big. And Steve's trying to figure out the sizing for these cards. And the only question I suppose there is to be had is, what did he do with the Jeskai Charm? Did he pump his team to give him lifelink and +1/+1? And that's what it looks like he did, instead of maybe putting the Siege Rhino back on top. So it looks like the stack is clear at this point.
Yeah, I would assume by discarding the Disdainful Stroke, he's not trying to put the Siege Rhino on top of the deck. Because he still has 1 stroke left over, so he can fight the Rhino that's on the top of Steve's deck, but he may not be able to beat a follow-up Rhino.
So it looks like the team has +1/+1 and lifelink. But all this does is, if you're Steve, you got a Siege Rhino on top of your deck. Now you do know about the Disdainful Stroke, but I think Steve might just be comfortable saying no attacks, or he might be comfortable saying attack with everything, which might be profitable.
Well, if he can make any inroads into Tom's board without, you know, losing too much on the way back, it's worth a lot to him, you know? But Tom's got an ascendancy. It doesn't take much for him to go wild here. I don't know if there's a good attack to be made, but it's worth at least trying to find it if there is.
And that's exactly what Steve's doing right now. Now, those creatures are pretty big out there. That's the thing that you of course, have to keep in mind. But he's swinging in. Maybe. Looks like he is. Now, keep in mind, he does have a copy of Abzan Charm in his hand, which can make things a little bit interesting. Abzan Charm on the Trampler is the one that is of the most interest here. I think that's the other thing that you have to keep in mind in this situation.
Another thing, you know, if Tom underblocks the Siege Rhino, you know, if he blocks only exactly enough, and Steve has a pump spell or a removal spell, then Tom just dies.
So now it's time to get blocking. Now, one thing you can do with Abzan Charm that is rather unique is exile target creature with power 3 or greater. It can be your own. So you see Tom double blocking Tasker in this situation. It's certainly within the realm of possibility for Steve to say, okay, that's fine. I will kill my Tasker to make sure that you don't gain any life off of these blocks. But again, just an option that's available to Steve, as he will sacrifice his Windswept Teeth and get a land out of his deck. He'll have to shuffle away a Siege Rhino here. It looks like he's going to grab a Force out of his deck, but he'll go with the Plains instead. Courser triggers as long as he does remember them. We'll see the top card of his deck here in just a moment, which is a copy of Temple of Silence. Here's Abzan Charm. He's going to put a +1/+1 counter on both coursers. Can't forget that you can distribute there.
I mean, this leaves Steve with a pretty commanding board, and yes, Tom still has the ascendancy, but his board going into his own turn is much less threatening.
Yeah. So the dust will settle. Tom will lose some stuff. He'll gain some stuff. He gets some life back. So he's actually not doing too bad here. Much better board than I thought he would have coming into this turn. I do wonder if Steve was just maybe not supposed to attack that turn at all. It doesn't look like he got doesn't feel like he got a lot of work done.
I just assumed by the way the tokens were getting distributed that he was actually going to take care of those tokens, the monks. But now, I mean, Tom could easily kill him this turn.
Yeah, and he's got life to work with. And Treasure Cruise is not a bad place to start. He's also got a copy of Raise the Alarm too. Yeah, this gets interesting all of a sudden. Jeskai Ascendancy's going to trigger Stoke the Flames. Now this gets very interesting. 2 soldier tokens are going to come in. Here's a Treasure Cruise. Tom moving a little faster now.
Yes. Well, there's daylight now.
Yes, there are. Another Stoke the Flames. Now keep in mind, none of his creatures in play are red. So he'll actually have to use red mana to cast Stoke.
Yep.
Some of the creatures will untap with Convoke, but he can't do the, with the goblins that he would do from Hordeling Outburst. Untap, draw, untap, draw. Now, if he runs into a Hordeling Outburst while he's doing all this stuff, that works out great for him. He's going to discard a Stoke the Flames. So now he'll draw 3 cards. Jeskai Ascendancy among the cards. But this game has changed. Now he's trying to figure out if I can kill you.
And the Stoke the Flames is worth 9 points of damage?
Yeah, I count 9. 4 from itself, 2 prowess triggers, 3 from Ascendancy. Yeah, that's 9 points. Indirectly. Negate among the cards. Tom needs to make sure he doesn't get himself killed on the backswing, obviously.
Yep.
If there is a backswing. Here's a big attack. You see both players counting up exactly how much is being dealt. I had a feeling that might be lethal, and it is. So all of a sudden, in a game that I didn't think Tom was going to be able to win, and I don't think Steve thought that Tom was able to win it either, those blocks, maybe a misuse of that Abzan Charm.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible Steve missed one of the prowess triggers from the tokens.
I think so.
Something happened there because I think Steve was in a pretty commanding position. Once Tom uses the Jeskai Charm, the worst case scenario is Steve says, all right, your turn. Doesn't engage in combat. The way things played out there instead, Tom got to gain a bunch of life, essentially lose nothing, keep his Jeskai Ascendancy, untap and win fairly easily.
Yeah, what you saw is a lot of things on the stack, and I think the confusion there for Steve is that he thought that those tokens were 3/3s, but if you take a look at how the stack resolved, you got a Jeskai Ascendancy trigger. That's 1+1/+1. You had the prowess triggers from the mentor tokens themselves. That's another +1/+1. And then the Jeskai Charm gets +1/+1 as well, and lifelink. So those tokens are actually 4/4s, not 3/3s. So when he confidently played Abzan Charm and split up the counters onto the coursers, I think he imagined those were 3 toughness creatures, and that was just not the case.
Yeah, you know, if you're in Steve's position there, he's losing 2 of those tokens. You're trading, the Tassiger is trading with a token. You still have your Siege Rhino. The board looks fine, but something got lost there because we were both a little taken aback when Tom got to untap there with as much of the board as he had.
Yeah.
And when the Ascendancy in play and two monks with prowess, doesn't take a lot for Tom to kill him.
Yeah, all it took was 1 turn, and that got the job done very quickly. So we'll get a third game between these 2 great players here in just a moment. While we do wait, we talked about one book, and one good book does deserve another, or 4 of them, in Cardboard Crack.
Yeah, we have the 4th one available for sale right now. Very popular Magic the Gathering themed black and white comic strip. All of these books are available on sale right now for $12.99 a piece. You can head over to StarCityGames.com/cardboardcrack to order your copy or copies today.
Love that comic. Follow him on Twitter. Big fan of all the work that is done there. Maybe a 5th book will be on the way. The first 4 have been very popular thanks to you guys. So definitely head over to StarCityGames.com/cardboardcrack to be able to get one of these 4 fantastic paperback books. Interesting deck here from Tom. Not a lot of creatures. You know, he's got some copies of Soulfire Grandmaster and Monastery Mentor. He's got 3 copies of Hordling Outburst and Raise the Alarms. And then you got kind of a wacky sideboard. You know, coming into this tournament, this is not something I would expect Tom to play.
Yeah, and the token deck historically has been pretty streamlined when it wants to do game 1. See a lot of 4-ofs here. Tom dabbling with a Dig Through Time, a Jeskai Charm, an End Hostilities, a Disdainful Stroke, a Sarkin, an Elspeth, all in the main deck. And then pretty close to a Highlander sideboard. I mean, there's 3 negates, 2 End Hostilities, and then 10 1-ofs.
I like 10 1-ofs. This, what he's doing is feeling it out.
Yeah, you got
Feeling
it.
out
You,
right
know, you never know until you know.
Yeah. To be fair, it is week 1. So, like, you know, it's easy to make fun of a lot of 1-off sideboards, but when it's week 1 of a new format, you don't know if Citadel Siege is good.
Right.
Might as well give it a try.
I don't know, but...
You know, Steve's got his 1 Ugin. I'm sure he's thinking, yeah, it's a powerful card. Might as well give it a shot and find out. We know this one's good. Here's a Thoughtseize. Couple of cards here for the boss. You'll see 2 copies of Jeskai Ascendancy, a Jeskai Charm, a card that was instrumental in him winning game number 2. Monastery Mentor, no slouch during that game, and Holding Outburst. Though, as you see the other 2 lands in Shivan Reefs, this is kind of the problem with Jeskai tokens. A lot of 3-mana spells in the deck.
Yeah, this is a hand that's cumbersome for Tom. It's nice that he has some insulation here. Steve can't take the lone threat because there's Holding Outburst and Monastery Mentor. He can't take the Ascendancy because there's a second copy. So in that respect, this hand is pretty Thoughtseize proof. But if you're Tom, you're not thrilled that your game starts on turn 3 against something like Abzan Midrange, where it's pretty important to capitalize early.
Yeah. CC play another Temple there in Temple of Plenty. Top card goes to the bottom. We'll head back the boss's way. Dig Through Time's the draw. Not ideal.
No, I think that would have been a really good turn for something to do on turn 2.
Yeah. Raise the Alarm would have been a nice one to find. Rubin going to sacrifice a Windswept Heath very quickly. Search for Forest. Feels like perhaps a Courser is on the way, but we will find out here momentarily. And it is a Courser. So we'll take a look at the top card. It's a Thoughtseize, and we'll kick it back Ross's way. Ross will draw. It's time to start deploying some of these 3-mana spells. His Battlefield Forge was the draw. Mana base a little painful right now, too.
It is, though, that only matters so much against a deck like Abzan Midrange. They can race sometimes, and Siege Rhino is problematic, but not the worst matchup to draw a bunch of pain lands.
Shivan Reef comes down. Hordling Outburst. 3 Goblin tokens will join the fray. We'll see what Rubin can put together here. We know he's going to draw Thoughtseize, so he'll play it. See, the top card of his deck is a copy of Courser Crucifix. Ross's hand hasn't changed all that much. 2 Jeskai Ascendancies along with the Jeskai Charm, and Dig Through Time is one of the missing pieces that Steve didn't know about, Battlefield Forge being the other.
And I wonder if Tom's play last turn was informed by the fact that he knew Steve was drawing Thoughtseize, where if he was on the fence about whether or not he wants to deploy Ascendancy or not, the fact that he knows that Steve is drawing a Thoughtseize and he'd rather not have his 1 threat card in Hordeling Outburst stripped out, tilted Tom towards doing what he did.
Tom going to play his Battlefield Forge. Looks like he's going to take a little bit of damage here to deploy Jeskai Charm. That's going to put Courser back on top of the deck. You saw Steve didn't play a land last turn, so Tom with a little time ebb action there. Get in for 3 points of damage. Time ebb doesn't get a lot of play here on the cast, so
no.
I want to make sure I got that out there.
Yep. Repel.
Temporal Spring.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Courser's going to come back down. Courser's on top. Take a draw. It's a Mystic Monastery.
Which occasionally shows up in Legacy decks for what I can gather to be no reason.
Temporal Spring?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're dead on about that.
It's almost like there's some sort of secret, like there's a secret handshake involved or something where like that's the way that you know you're in the club is if you have a Temporal Spring in your Temur Delver deck or whatever.
Tom goes for a cruise, and he'll pass that turn back. Top card here for Steve is an Elspeth. That's not a land. He's going to get in here with a Courser. The attack is relatively safe. Deploy another Courser and simply pass the turn back. Ross is going to untap and draw. Another Mystic Monastery is what he's found. Quite a few blue cards over there.
Appears to be a lot of card drawing in the hand.
He's worked his way into a slower configuration after sideboard, it seems, with multiple copies of Dig Through Time in his hand, which means there are multiple copies in his deck. He has one in his main deck, and he's got an additional one in his sideboard. So,
with all of his counter spells, you know, he can fight the good fight over the expensive stuff.
Yeah. Gonna deploy Ascendancy. And the boss just passed the turn back. He's at 14. Rubin's at 12. Sandstep Citadel is the top card. You saw him draw Elspeth. Citadel coming to play, trigger both Coursers, tie things up here at 14. Top card after that is a copy of Sorin. Steve looking at a copy of Erase in his hand. A cheap and efficient way to get Jeskai Ascendancy off the table. He will take the opportunity to do that. Keep in mind, that's important. One, get Jeskai Ascendancy off the table is always a good idea, but it doesn't go to the graveyard.
Yeah, exiling is a huge deal. And there's a lot of removal in this format that exiles. It often seems innocuous, but with the power level of these Delve cards, it matters a lot.
4 damage will come across. The boss going to go down to 9 here. He's got to figure something out. Looks like he's going to come into the red zone. There is a mountain and just a passing of the turn. Not all that exciting. Rubin will draw that Sorin. Caves of Koilos on top, now into play. He's up to 13. Read the Bones is next. Rubin with the Siege Rhino in hand. Here's the attack. Ross going to go down to 5.
And this is the type of spot where Disdainful Stroke's incredibly powerful.
It really is.
Steve's got to add something to the board. You know, he can't just be read the Bonesing and Abzan Charming from here. But if his whole turn gets devoured by Disdainful Stroke, it's really bad news.
He'll go with the Rhino. That looks like that's in there. Boy, Tom's hand has not come together very well. He'll take the opportunity to Dig Through Time.
Yeah, I'm sure Steve can't believe that that actually resolved.
And Hostilities among the options here. Perhaps Tom considers that route. But Tom, the problem here is that he's drawn a lot of his Delve cards and not any way to really get cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, he's not playing the most efficient game right now. I mean, and Hostilities is curious. He's gone into this pure control route. I don't know if Steve necessarily anticipated it.
Monastery Mentor the draw. You saw Tom take and Hostilities and Sarkin. One of my favorite attacks in Magic.
Yeah.
The attack before casting a mass removal effect. So there's End Hostilities. That's going to clear everything away. Now, you know he's not drawing a land, so if you're Tom, you're happy about that. You don't have to worry about Elspeth at this point. And you're hoping he doesn't have a siege round, and so there's not a lot you can do about it. There's Sorin. That's in. As is the vampire token that flies. Which is, oddly enough, going to be a copy of Tom Ross in a minute. There it is.
Most bitter of ironies.
Now, Tom does have an answer. Does have a Stoke the Flames in his hand.
That's just a really good play there on Steve's part. The Sorin's good enough to win if Tom has nothing. And he gets to try to keep the Rhino in the hand as his big play if he's able to bleed out the Disdainful Stroke.
Plus, it's hard to pass up killing Tom with his own token.
Yeah, that's bonus points.
Yeah.
If the play was literally a tie, that would tilt it for me.
Yeah.
But I think this is a better line of play regardless.
Tom going to play a Monastery Mentor. Follow that up with a copy of Sarkin. Take care of that token. Get himself a Monk. And I believe Steve is sliding a Siege Rhino forward in his hand. He is. He's going to cast it. And that is going to get the job done. Steve Rubin's going to win this match over Tom Ross, 2-0. Second time we have seen them play in the Open Series. The result remains the same. Steve Rubin with Obzon mid-range gets the job done over Tom Ross yet again.
Really sweet match. Looks like a pretty commanding matchup there for Steve. I think that